But I love the pieces. They're my folks, but whew, wow. We're up in two, three. Hey, everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome to the Santita Jackson Show here on AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. I'm on Blue Sky, santitajackson.bsky.social. Santitajackson.bsky.social. At Santita J, that's where I am on X. And the Santita Jackson and Friends Facebook page, Facebook/Santita Jackson and Friends. And then, of course, right here on YouTube on the Santita Jackson Show. Everybody like and subscribe. Hey, Bernadette, you here first. Hey, you got over here from this first hour. I love it. I love it. I love it. You know, we're going to be talking with one of the attorneys from public counsel out in Los Angeles. They really look out. They're really a civil rights organization. And I can't wait to hear what they're seeing out there, because one would get the impression that all of Los Angeles is on fire. And that is not true. I mean, that is why Governor Newsom is saying, what are you doing? When you nationalize when you federalize the National Guard, there's a lot that comes with that. And as Americans, we are not accustomed to living in a military state, not just a police state, but a military state. I told you in the last hour, when I was working for Roberta Flack, Jim Narekas, Fairness and Accuracy Reporting. And we flew into Los Angeles during, I guess, when they were still on lockdown. We had been overseas, and the question was, how are we going to get back to the United States? Because the country was on fire, quite frankly, and getting in was not the easiest thing. You kind of had to wait. And she was slated to do the Arsenio Hall show to compress the story. Unlike other late night shows, Arsenio did not shut his show down. He kept it going. And he brought people in to talk about the condition that fomented these riots. You know, what do they say? That riots are the language of the unheard? Yeah. And so my father was on the show. Miss Flack did a wonderful tribute to Rodney King and to people, the ballad of the sad young men. You know, it was a tremendous experience. But you know what broke my heart, Jim, was sitting in a car on Crenshaw Boulevard. My father was inside of KJLH, Stevie Wonder Station. And at dusk, at 6:00, I saw tanks rolling down the street. And I just said, oh my gosh, what is going on? What is happening in America? This is where we are. Jim Narekas, I just had some people who were just saying, and I'm not mad at them, I think there's much more to the story, who said, look, these people are illegal. They're carrying the Mexican flag, and they just need to get out of our country. And we've got other problems here that we need to deal with. What say you? Help me to understand.
Well, I think a big part of the problem here is that media are misdefining the problem. This is not a story about violent protesters. This is not even a story about immigration. This is a story about the militarization of law enforcement. This is a story about the federal government sending in troops to repress protests. And that is an emergency as far as I'm concerned, because the country where when people protest the government, whatever the government is doing, when troops can be sent in to suppress that protest, that is a country that you don't want to be living in. That is a road we don't want to go down.
Why do you say that?
Because it's a world where people who are, chanting slogans against the government can be met with, machine guns. There's Reaper drones flying over Los Angeles right now. This is trading in the idea of a free country where people are free to assemble, free to speak, for a police state where the government has a monopoly on the most violent kinds of weapons, and therefore it can dictate who is allowed to speak and who can't. That is not the country, I put it to you, that we want to live in.
Because I don't think it stops at the tanks and the soldiers. I mean, you send the military in to fight a war, and that's why I thought that the Posse Comitatus Act of 1878, one of the lessons of the Civil War was that we did not want to do this in the United States again because it almost destroyed the Union. You know, I mean, in fact, we haven't gotten over this. We haven't gotten over the Civil War. We're still litigating it. It's been more than 150 years. And it is still a real deep wound in the American psyche and in the American body politic.
I think we have a government right now that believes that the wrong side won the Civil War.
Yes. And so I'm saying you've got the mayor of Los Angeles. You've got the governor of California who are saying, look, these disturbances are happening in a very, very small area of Los Angeles. They're not happening all over LA. I promise you. In Los Angeles in 1992, it was all over the city. It was all over the city. It was. And they did need calm. But they couldn't. You couldn't just. You can't just beat people back, Jim. You've got to give them an opportunity to vent. You have to have them talk, which is why ultimately they had Rodney King come out and say, "Hey, everybody, I'm okay." And he just said, because when he saw, and I can only imagine how he felt.
Can't we all just get along?
Can we all just get along? Because he was like, "Wait a minute, all this over me? I don't want this on my head." And what did Chaparral say exactly, Jim? Marines are taught to kill on sight. I think that this can go into a really bad place real fast, Jim.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah, no, I think we're at a bad place. I think that this is, there's a path that we're going down, and if we go down that path, we'll look back on now and say, this was the beginning of the end. This was when we stopped being a country where people were seen as having the right to express opposition to the government, and became a country where the government can use force to silence people. That is the issue now, and I think that people are getting distracted by the questions of, is vandalism something that we need to crack down on? Is it dangerous to whatever? The real fact of the matter here is we have the United States government seizing the National Guard, federalizing the National Guard without the request or permission of the state, sending them in to suppress protests against the federal government policies. That is an incredibly dangerous, reckless, and ominous thing to have going on.
Do you think that is being communicated adequately in media reports?
No, I think that the media have a playbook that they use to covering protests. By and large, establishment journalists do not like protests. They see it as being akin to spectators at a sporting event running onto the field during the game. The citizens are not supposed to be participants in politics in this way, according to established media. In fact, it's there's a reason why among the rights that are enshrined in the First Amendment, freedom of assembly is up there. There is a constitutional right to get together with your fellow citizens and express your feelings about what the body politic should be doing. That is something that has been honored less and less. I think that the idea of when people talk about First Amendment zones, I think that was a real kind of benchmark for the decline in respect for the ability of ordinary people to participate in politics. That you would have at a convention, you would have a area set off with chain link fence, and that was where the First Amendment got to be in effect. And by extension, the First Amendment was not in effect everywhere else. And I think that is the attitude of government, which obviously government does not like people saying that they're against what the government is doing. That's not something that people typically want to hear. But journalists, establishment journalists, have too often been taking the side of people who are more worried about disruption, about unrest, about chaos, than they are about the government using its force, its awesome force, to suppress people who are trying to protest what the government is doing.
Solomon, you're entitled to your opinion, but ad hominem attacks just don't work here. Now, you know better than that. Don't do that. You make the point, Solomon. You said that the issue is we have non-citizens protesting in America, flying their flags, Mexican flags, and attacking ICE and our police. So why can't the military arrive and fight this invasion? You can't compare, he continued, what's going on today with the 92 riots. Well, I was letting you know, Solomon, that I've actually seen troops deployed on our streets and how unsettling it was as an American to see that. You're right, you can't compare this. It's an imperfect comparison to compare this to 92 because the governor asked the president to federalize the National Guard in 92. That is not what happened here. In fact, the governor and the mayor have asked the president not to do that. The last time this happened was George Wallace, when our president had to go against George Wallace in Alabama. Okay? That was a different thing, and it was a life and death issue on so many levels. So let's get right to it. So what do you say? Is this about, Robert says when Mexicans fly the Mexican flag, it isn't making many friends to help their cause. I know some will say, what about the Irish flag and other flags? A lot of folks fly their flags, their ancestral flags. And I don't know why everybody's so upset about this one, Jen.
There's a report by an independent reporter named Ken Klippenstein, who do you know him?
Yeah.
He does some great work, I think. And he had a account from the streets of Los Angeles. And one of the things that he was pointing out is that very rarely do you hear from protesters in this coverage.
Mm-hmm.
It's been mainly, you have people from the administration, you have people from the state government, the city government, talking about what is the best way to handle the protesters. But very rarely do you hear from the protesters themselves. And Ken said that it was interesting when you actually talk to the protesters. One of the things that he was struck by is that overwhelmingly they are U.S. citizens. Mm. They are not illegals, as the ugly phrase is. They are people who are mostly born in the United States. They're citizens of the United States. They're expressing their opinions about their own government, and they are upset about the immigration raids, Yes, but they are also upset about the police state that is being imposed on their city, which I think is absolutely something that people should be outraged about. Um, and can talk to the person who I believe was the person widely photographed waving a Mexican flag. This person is an American citizen. His ancestors are Mexican. And
they're probably from California.
Right. Yeah. Was carrying this flag because he felt he had to stick up for his heritage and his relatives, because there has been such a demonization of anything foreign, and I think this attitude that, like, well, of course you're going to send in the Marines because someone has a Mexican flag. That attitude, with all respect, is nuts. To think that someone having a flag means that you call in the Marines. That is that's a bizarre position to take. I have to say.
Well, Solomon, you said you support Trump 100% and you're glad he's president, and you're more than welcome to that. This is not even about him. This is about, to me, this goes beyond President Trump, Solomon. This goes to freedom of assembly, freedom to speak, freedom to have this show and other shows, even shows whose opinions are radically different from my own. We're removing books from libraries. We're shutting down information. And that is a very dangerous thing, Solomon. It's very, very dangerous.
Yeah.
And
Trump is not going to be president forever. If he follows the Constitution, he will be out in 2029. Even if he doesn't follow the Constitution, which at this point is an open question, he's not going to live forever. He's going to be replaced by somebody, and he's not necessarily going to be replaced by a Democrat. He's not necessarily going to be replaced by someone who is a follower of the MAGA faith. We don't know. Once we break the constitutional tradition of democratic election of presidents and peaceful transfers of power, you have no idea who's going to be the president or whatever they call the person in charge. And the powers that Trump is amassing to himself will be the powers that this next unknown person has. And they, I don't think that Trump is on your side, but this next person who's in power, you have no idea what side they will be on. There's all sorts of possibilities for what kind of ideology would be used to justify continued reign of a police state.
But Jim, the technocrats have taken over. This is about Palantir. This is about.
Yes, I mean that is the kind of person I'm thinking of.
Yeah, I mean this goes beyond it. They already put a Palantir's guy on the ticket. He's the vice president, Peter Thiel, who founded Palantir, which is on track to surveil us and give us social credit scores.
Yeah, these are people who have no belief in democracy. They think that democracy is a terrible idea.
Yeah.
They think that the country should be run by a CEO representing the billionaire class, and openly having the power to basically fire the American public and make decisions about what's best for the country based on their own pretty far out ideology. If you ever read some of the ideas that they have about the way the country should be run, they're strange sci-fi ideas in many cases. So to say, I like Trump and therefore I don't care that he's sending in the Marines. The next person who sends the Marines may be sending them against people that you do care about. And that is why we should be against anyone sending in the Marines to put down protests against the government.
Yeah, because Dr. King protested against the government, and indeed, you had to go against law to end slavery. I mean, Jim, I think we're forgetting some basic things here. About how what we've had to fight. What was legal? Slavery was legal. It was legal for a woman not to be able to vote. You know, it was illegal for indigenous people to be citizens. Come on, you guys, think about that. And so, what do you need to say before you go, Jim? I could keep you forever, but I promise you I'd let you go at the bottom of the hour.
I appreciate that. I feel like this is a moment where we really need to be watching and expressing ourselves about a very dangerous move that is going on by our federal government. The once the U.S. military is unleashed as a political force, I'm afraid that is a genie that will not go back in the bottle. And that is why, as the cap is coming off the bottle, we need to shove it back on. And that needs to be done through our elected officials. It needs to be done through the courts. And it needs to be done by the public, by getting out into the streets and defending our ability to get out in the streets, because we may not have it for much longer.
Well, we've got to be very careful because it's when you lose rights, it's hard to get them back. It's very hard.
Yes.
Jim Narakis, fairness and accuracy in reporting. Thank you so much for getting us on point. Sending you so much love. Give my love to Janine Jackson and the team at Extra and Fairness and Accuracy in Reporting.
Thank you so much.
I am so honored to have this attorney with us today, Ritu Mahan. There you go. Mahajan, right? Mahajan. There you go. Estes. I'm like, I know I'm not crazy. Look, I have one of these multisyllabic names that people go, wait a minute, what? But I'm so glad that you're with us today you know what? I really need you to help us to understand what we're doing. You're of course, the directing attorney of Public Counsel's Community Development Project. Public Counsel, really, you are a litigating arm for really the least of these. I mean, I think I can paint that broader picture. And you work, of course, with my dear friend, Tracy Rice, who worked with Reverend Jesse Jackson for many, many, many years, for decades. And Tracy would, of course, only pivot to an organization such as your own because the least of these need defending. And I'd like for you to help me to understand what is going on in Los Angeles right now, because you've got the governor and the mayor of Los Angeles, the governor of California, the mayor of Los Angeles, who are saying, wait a minute, bringing in the military is a step too far. You've got the president who is doing something that that LBJ had to do against George Wallace. And I'm like, wait a minute, this is not happening all over Los Angeles like in '92. This is in a confined area, but when attorney Mahajan Estes, I was in Los Angeles in '92. At the time, I was singing for Roberta Flack, and I've said this several times here. And we came into LA, we did Arsenio Hall show. And I stayed a few extra days because my father came into town to do Arsenio Hall show and to help settle things down. We were on Crenshaw Boulevard at Stevie Wonder Station, KJLH. And at dusk, to see these tanks rolling down the street. And then when we finally made our way back over to our hotel in Beverly Hills, to see the same. It was devastating. And when I hear the president talking about quelling rebellion, when I see the TikToks about grammar school graduations being raided by ICE, help me to understand what is going on out there. I mean, because the corporate media are giving me the impression that LA's on fire.
Mhm.
And it almost like kind of justifies federalizing the National Guard. What's happening out there?
Yeah, thank you so much, Santita, for having me today. I'm based in Los Angeles. I was born and raised here. I was in downtown this morning, yesterday morning. Things are right now quiet, peaceful. I obviously people here are very upset about the way in which immigration enforcement activities are being carried out in our city, with things really getting heated on Friday when the federal agents came in to carry out raids in Los Angeles. And the raids were conducted in a way that I think many had never seen before, where the agents are wearing pretty much like military style gear, like have a lot of reinforcements, are arresting and detaining people without warrants, without identifying themselves, without really following any laws. And so we saw that Friday morning, Friday afternoon, in the fashion industry, near Home Depots. We have street vendors getting picked up, as you mentioned, agents outside of graduations. And, it just, people are upset. They're angry that families are being ripped apart, that, a lot of the people that have been detained, attorneys aren't able to access them. We're being told that, you can't talk to this detainee. Families aren't able to access their loved ones. And we're seeing people being basically shipped out, quickly without any hesitation, trying to do it as fast as possible so nobody can stop what's happening.
So tell me, what is the impact? I mean, have the ICE been going all over Los Angeles? Because it seems like this has been happening, but something happened, crystallized last week. Something happened that really pushed people over the edge in Los Angeles. What happened?
Yeah, I mean, I think pressure's been building for a while, right? Like everybody's been absorbing the federal administration's actions, the ways in which they've been demonizing immigrants and making it seem like, anything that's done in the name of equity is unlawful. And on Friday, as I mentioned, the immigration agents had a well thought out plan of specific areas to target. And people just couldn't take it anymore. They're standing up for their fellow neighbors, their community members, and they're trying to protect them from being basically kidnapped by these agents and sent away without any due process, without, any way to get in touch with them. And so I think, initially it started as just like people trying to stand up for their neighbor and trying to protect them. And then there were protests because one of the biggest union labor leaders was arrested and assaulted. So people were peacefully protesting. And yes, there have been some folks that have been rioting and engaging in, in dangerous acts, which, no one's advocating for. But it's definitely not the case that LA is on fire, that this is going on, throughout the region. It's in certain parts of downtown LA where, the protests have been occurring and where some of the rioting was happening like later at night.
What does it feel like there? I mean, I have just so many questions for you, but help me to understand what it feels like to have, even have the military deployed to Los Angeles, even in that confined area. What does that do to your city?
I mean, it feels like, that we're at war. That's what it feels like. You don't feel safe. You feel like your government's kind of turning on you and trying to make it seem like you need these guards when we really don't. And it's like we're fighting amongst each other when, a lot of people in LA feel like the federal government started this. Like, you send in these agents to carry out enforcement activities in a way that's not lawful. And you have this planned thing. Supposedly they're going to be here for 30 days carrying out activities. And they've said that they're trying to make an example of Los Angeles in the way in which they're doing this. So it doesn't feel good. It feels like our city's being turned into a war zone when it's not needed.
Do you think that this is only about the migrants and immigration? It seems like this is happening at a moment when Americans are scared, as this constituent said to Senator Ernst at her town hall meeting in Iowa, people are going to die. People are scared about Social Security cuts, Medicaid cuts, Medicare cuts, WIC cuts, SNAP cuts. I mean, it's just a lot of things are coming at Americans at one time. Do you think it's like a multitude of issues that are kind of coming together for people?
Yes, I think it's like I said, people are feeling a lot of pressure. It's kind of like a boiling point. It's the immigration stuff. It's the cost of everything has gone up. The tariffs, the cut to our the different things that we rely on to keep us going, to help us retire, to help us with healthcare. All of these things being slashed, and you feel like you have no control over it, right? You feel helpless. Like, what can I do to stop this? And so I think people are just tired of it and they can't take it anymore.
Wow, it sounds like that. What is the movie Network? I'm mad as hell and I can't take it anymore. It feels like that. And so when you see, where could this go right and where could the deployment of the troops go wrong?
I mean, I know that they've said that they've deployed, a couple thousand National Guards, they're deploying the Marines. I just think that, having more forces here that have guns and are militarized, you could just lead to violence. And I don't want that, right? We don't want to hurt each other. We don't want people, getting in harm's way. And I just don't think that's what we need. I think what we need is dialogue, conversation. We want to see the humanity in each other. We want to build community. We don't want to send in troops that are, a lot of our communities don't have the best experience with law enforcement, and don't trust law enforcement. And I just don't think it's the answer to sort of respond to people's frustration.
Well, I see Chaparral is making a point. Why are they not in Compton or Watts? She laughs. LOL. I mean, where are the troops? I mean, I'm just sorry hearing you say the Marines being brought into Los Angeles. That's like,
no. I mean, I personally haven't seen the troops, but my guess is they're being deployed to like downtown LA, which is where some of the heavy protesting was happening. And that, what this person is commenting on also leads me to say that a lot of the raids have been happening in predominantly Latinx communities where they are racially profiling. They're assuming that people that have brown skin, aren't legal. They do not have legal status, and going after, communities that that have those people living in them. And they have, we have heard of ICE being out in Compton, Inglewood. So they're really kind of all over now, and they're showing up at random places. But yeah, with the National Guard, I believe they may be in downtown. I personally haven't seen them. Like I said, I was in downtown yesterday and today. I live in a suburb of LA, and there's no activity around here.
What are your rights when you are visiting the United States? Does someone with a green card, do you have rights? Do you have civil rights? Do you have civil protections? Help me to understand, because I'm trying to find out, because at one time the greatest number of visa overstays in the United States were from Canadians. No one ever talked about that.
I mean, so there obviously people come here from different countries. They get here, in different ways. Some come here with visas that they overstay. Some come here through the border. But, regardless of your immigration status, everybody here has constitutional rights. We all have a right to, demand that immigration agents provide a judicial warrant if they want to enter, our private homes or private facilities or search us or even arrest us. We have a right to ask them for documentation. We have a right to remain silent. So we all have these rights under the Constitution, regardless of where we were born and how we got here. And I see someone's commenting, what about people we've seen in the news, some of the rioters throwing bricks and causing violence.
Yeah.
As I mentioned earlier, that, yes, that has been happening, but it's a very small element of what's happening. And, I'm not condoning what they're doing. That is violent, unlawful behavior, and they should not be doing that. But that's not the large majority of people here that are protesting what's happening. And I just think in the media, they're trying to portray it as like, oh, the city's on fire, everybody's rioting, everybody's, being violent and looting. And so we need to send in the guards. And that's simply not the case. As I said, I live here. I was raised here. I've been to downtown all this week, and it's calm.
As we're watching all of these issues, and all of these issues that are lurking just beneath the surface, do you get the sense that perhaps the migrant issue is being put out front to be a cover over all of these other things that Americans would and should be talking about? Like the threats to healthcare, threats to retirement. Most of us can't afford, medical emergency. Most of us, can't afford college even. It's state schools are getting out of reach for people. So, really, are they using the migrants as a cover so that we can?
Yeah. I think it's a good distraction. I think it's a good, it's an issue that gets certain voters sort of riled up. It's easy to blame, in my opinion, immigrants for people's problems, right? It's like kind of blaming someone who doesn't look like you may not relate to, for things that are happening to you. And so I do think that they are being used as a way to sort of have people focus on that rather than the other things that are happening in this country, and to really, then people aren't asking these other questions that you've just asked. Like, why have I lived here my whole life, but I still don't have a savings? Why can't I afford to buy a house? Why, is my retirement being cut? And how can I stop that?
But what are some of, people have really, they've seen some things that have happened that some people might have even been disinclined to support the migrants. They might have even said they're illegal, yada, yada, yada. But something has happened. I've seen a lot of people on TikTok and in social media who said, wait a minute, now they've gone too far. I've seen ICE break up a grammar school graduation. They're breaking up families. What are some of the things that have happened out there?
So yeah, I think, President Trump, part of his campaign was that he was going to work on reducing, the number of immigrants here in the United States. He focused on criminal immigrants, right? He kept on saying, there's people here that are criminals and they shouldn't be here, and we should send them back to where they came from. And many of us knew that his immigration policies aren't just going to be focused on criminals, and that's exactly what's happening, right? The people being picked up, many of them have been here like their whole lives, or 20 plus years. They built a family. They even have homes. Their kids have gone to college here. And they're the ones being picked up, and basically to meet these quotas that the government has set for how many people they need to deport every day. So what we've heard is the federal agents are feeling a lot of pressure that they need to pick up, thousands of people each day to meet these quotas. It doesn't matter whether the person's a criminal or not. It doesn't matter how long they've been here. Now, sometimes they even pick up US citizens or green card holders because they're not really sorting through people. It's just like, oh, you look like you're not from here. We're going to pick you up. We'll figure the rest of the stuff out later, which is so alarming, right? Like when they're not following the rule of law, it's like, it's a very slippery slope.
Well, because the only people who look like they don't belong here are people who look like you and me.
Yes.
Which is we're the ones who constantly have our place here questioned. I was trying to explain to some people, and I've had a disagreement, with some of my listeners, and my morning stars are over here, and I appreciate you, love you, and I'm so glad that you are here. Even as we respectfully disagree, as long as it's respectful, I can deal with it. You know how I am, everybody. I said, wait a minute, they're going to start gathering people, you know, you've been told to go back to Africa, India, um, go back to South America. I've been told to go back to some everywhere. You know, this is events, but they never tell this to. We had 38,000 Ukrainians brought to Chicago. 38,000. I'm not mad at anybody. But no one said a mumbling word. No one said anything about them. It's like, but they're Europeans. Of course they come here. But what the Haitians, the men were on horseback beating them. It felt like, my goodness, it felt like this is slavery. This is crazy. I mean, they're picking up people and they're taking them out of the country. The government says, yeah, I know I was wrong, but I'm not going to do anything about it. What rights do you have? I mean, as a citizen, and then as someone who's a green card holder. I mean, what are the differences?
I mean, the thing is, we have rights, but what we're seeing is a sort of a trampling of those rights. Even green card holders, as I mentioned, have rights, but there is, for green card holders at least, there's the chance that your green card could be revoked, if you engage in certain acts. And as we saw with that Columbia student that they detained, they're trying to revoke his green card, claiming that he's engaging in terrorist activities, etc. So as a green card holder, you do have legal status, but there might be limited circumstances in which your green card can be revoked. As a US citizen, I mean, we haven't yet heard of any situations where your citizenship can be, taken away from you. But as you know, the president is trying to promote, this idea that if you're born in this country, that shouldn't automatically mean that you become a citizen. He's trying to get rid of what's called birthright citizenship. Mm-hmm. And so, for someone like me, that means like I wouldn't be a citizen because, my parents immigrated here from another country and I was born here and that's how I became a citizen. But he's trying to get rid of that. So, time will tell what more comes from this administration. But as citizens, we too have rights, right? We have rights against warrantless searches and seizures. We have rights against just being picked up for no reason, being detained for no reason. Like, we all have rights to due process. It's just that to vindicate our rights, it takes time. Like, we might have to file a lawsuit that can take several years to resolve. And you saw that person that they sent to El Salvador now has returned, right? But that took like moving a mountain to get him back. So it's just, we're like in an uncharted territory.
We are in uncharted territory, and it is unsettling. And that's why I want to know just where is this going? Because the president says that he wants to basically squelch rebellion. What does that mean when you hear that? I mean, particularly in your space, just given the work that you and your colleagues do. Because, I mean, it's not just people who have immigration issues. I mean, really, you are a civil rights organization and you litigate along those lines, trying to help us to keep our civil rights. Mm-hmm. When you hear the president say, I am trying to squelch rebellion, what is that? Because Dr. King was a rebel, right? Mm-hmm. The great people in our history have all been rebels. I mean, George Washington rebelled against the monarchy. What does that mean?
To me, it means that, they're trying to quash anybody that does not agree with their viewpoint, right? So we've seen anybody that doesn't agree with their, agenda, how they, want to carry out things, their philosophy about who's an American and American values, they sort of want to suppress that. They want to suppress certain views, suppress certain work. They've now made it unlawful to talk about DEI, right? Which is crazy. It's like they just are trying to squash anything that, does not coincide with their agenda.
Well, I'm trying to find out that part with DEI. I don't understand, because the affirmative action decision, okay, they gutted every place but the military. And yet you've got the head of the Pentagon who has said, okay, we're going to end all of this. I'm like, but you're going against what the courts have said. I mean, what does this do to free speech, to people who have an opinion that differs from what the government says?
Yeah, I mean, it's really making it feel like people don't have free speech, right? Like, you say it's something wrong, you're gonna pay for it. Essentially, is what the messaging they're giving us is you have to only have one speech, which is the speech that, they want us to have. And if you speak any other way, express opinions that they don't like, there's gonna be consequences. And that's like a very, very terrifying sort of reality that we're in, because that's what we see in countries where there is a dictator, where it's an authoritarian regime. And I feel like that's what our country's becoming too. Some people don't want to admit that or acknowledge that, but that is what this is.
What does it say to you that, I mean, now we're just days away from this military parade? This is happening to me with that as the backdrop. Mm-hmm. How do you interpret that?
Yeah, I mean, I was reading about the parade and all the millions of dollars that are going to be spent on that. And, I don't know. I just feel like we're like the administration is trying to show a certain image, like, act to be one way. But inside, I feel like our country is going through a lot of turmoil, and a lot of things are being done to distract from the real issues that people are, faced with. And a lot of the things that, our administration promised, like, aren't happening, right? Like, the cost of things isn't going down. People don't have more in the bank. We haven't ended, these 2 wars that the administration said that he was going to put a stop to. So, yeah, it's just hard right now, I think, to feel a sense of like pride in our country and the way in which like things are being carried out.
How are we viewed? How are we being viewed globally? I mean, particularly now. I mean, as people are seeing the military deployed. I mean, I don't know if everyone heard you, but I certainly heard you when you talked about the National Guard and the Marines. The Marines being deployed not overseas, but here. I don't know if we really embraced that. That's why I kept sharing my story, because I think it was far more traumatizing to me than I knew it was traumatizing at the time. Me too. I really did. To see those tanks rolling down the street made me cry, because it was frightening. I said, I don't know where this is going to go. And maybe because my family personally felt COINTELPRO and what it does. But I know so many people who did, and they're not well-known people. But, people who've lifted up their voices. I mean, Fannie Lou Hamer was sterilized, for heaven's sake, for standing up, right? It just goes on and on and on. I mean, it's like we're betraying the best of ourselves, the best of our history, when we really sign up for this. I mean, because I think, what is it? The free speech means you fight for people to say something that you find abhorrent. And I think as an American, you're even supposed to fight for people, the desperate people who yearn to breathe free, who get to these shores. And it's like we fight for some people, we understand them, but we don't understand others. And quite frankly, it is racist. And it just, it's racist. And, they've just very quietly welcomed in these Afrikaners who have really not told the truth. They're saying that we're an oppressed minority. No, 7% of the people own 70% of the land. Part of making things right is you giving people their land back that you stole from them. And they're not getting, it's not that they're being excluded from the opportunity to have some land. You just can't have it all. 70% of the land is owned by 7 people. 7% of the people. That's crazy. And I'm wondering, but we embrace them. We bring them here, and no one has talked about. We've not had any discussions, Ritu, about them and what they represent. So, I mean, just as we close, where do we go? Where are we going from here with this? I mean, because I don't think people really understand what it means to have tanks running down their streets. I don't think they understand what it means to have not the police, but the Marines patrolling your neighborhood.
Mhm.
I,
I mean, I just think that we all need to stand up against this, right? Because even though right now it's happening in LA, tomorrow it could happen in Chicago, in New York, in all the cities across the United States. And if we don't, even though it may not be impacting you, your family, your neighbors, one day it very well could. And we need, just as our civil rights leaders always say, like, we need to stand up even when it's injustice being imposed on others. Like, you can't stand for just injustice no matter where it's happening. And a lot of in my personal opinion, the agenda that's being advanced is racist, is xenophobic, is, there's underlying motives behind it. It's not just like, oh, we want to get rid of the criminals because why should they have a right to be here? It's getting rid of the others, playing the blame game. And we need to stand up against it. That's the only way out of this. If we keep just, being quiet and sitting back and letting it happen, it's just going to get worse.
I don't think we can imagine what that can feel like, and what that will be like for everybody. I really don't think we understand that yet. I really don't. And we're on that downward slope, and maybe I don't know. I don't know if the parade will wake people up. I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen, but none of this feels good. And I think that if you're not unsettled by this, you're not paying attention, because while we are pressing down on vulnerable people over here, Ritu Mahajan Estes, one day that can be you. And if you keep on living long enough, it will be. You know, it just, karma comes quick, everybody. And we really, really need to understand. We have to figure out, I think, the kind of nation that we want. And so I want to thank you for all of the work that you do, because we need saving. Public counsel. I mean, because so many of us don't even know that there are people like you who are out there upon whom we can call when our rights are being violated. And I think you're going to have a lot of work to do. You have your work cut out for you, because I think many of us are going to need saving. I think the country does. Ritu Mahajan Estes, I want to thank you, Madam Attorney, for being with us today and helping us to understand what's going on in Los Angeles. And everybody, I want to thank you all for tuning in. Some of you agreed with what we were saying. Many of you did not, but I'm so glad that, in particular, those who did not, I'm glad that you stayed. And I hope that we will continue to have this conversation. I want it to be a civil conversation where we can talk to each other, not just over each other or at each other, but with one another. We need to do that. There's some issues that we need to resolve. We need to really understand what being an American means. We understand how we got here, who we displaced, when we got here, and how, even in all of our imperfections, a more perfect union can still come about. But a more perfect union means that everybody's in, nobody's out. We have to really think about that, everybody. Attorney Ritu Mahajan Estes, I want to thank you for being with us. All my love to all of our brothers and sisters at Public Counsel, and thank you for all of the work that you do.
Thank you, Santita. Thanks for having me. Bye.
God bless you. Everybody, I love you. It's been a joy being with you today. I hope that you have a wonderful evening, and I hope that you'll be at the Rainbow Push Convention, June 12th, 13th, and 14th. It's going to be great. 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 It's at 50th and Drexel. We really need to be together. Gabriella, I want to thank you for tuning in. My friend, my sister beloved, thank you so much. And America First, you're right. There's only one race on this planet. It's the human race. You're right. I did not start this racial discussion, America First, from California. I did not. Um, I didn't come up with the one drop rule. I didn't racialize slavery. We've been trying to fight it since all of this was instituted. I didn't start this fire, but we all need help trying to put it out. So sending you much love, Gabriella. I hope this will be the beginning of a wonderful friendship, my friend. America First, California. I hope that you'll come back in East West Talk. Everybody, like and share the show. Like and share the show. I'm really glad that you all came here. What did Carol Burnett used to say? I'm so glad we got this time together, just to have a laugh or sing a song. Well, didn't have a lot of laughs, didn't sing any songs, but we did come together, and I thank you for that. May God bless you. I hope to see you tomorrow on the Santita Jackson Show. Everybody, God bless you. Have a great one. That's right. America First. Say it loud. That's right. And you are so sweet, Gabriella. You just a sweetheart. Thank you, girl. And everyone, I'm sending you so much love. Oh my gosh. Well, what did you say? Just like Trump felt the other day, his pride will bring about a great fall. And I think that you can say that about the United States. And I want us to grow up in our politics and just grow up as a nation and really start being good to each other and to everybody else. We can be great. Not a game. We can truly be great. Greatness awaits us. But we have to embrace it. And you can't be big and little at the same time. My father says that all the time. If we choose to be big, we will truly be great. When we bring all of the huddled masses who yearn to breathe free, when we open our arms to them and embrace everybody, I really think that America will be great. That is what's going to happen. That's what's going to happen. May God bless you. I love you, Effie. Hope to see you at the convention. Hope to see you at the gospel show, the gospel celebration at Fellowship Missionary Baptist Church on Thursday night. Rainbow Push Convention, June 12th, 13th, and 14th. I hope to see you there, everybody, at 50th and Drexel here in Chicago. May God bless you, everybody. Have a good night.